Hello everyone and welcome to 2020. I thought it would only be fitting to start out the new year by going through my scrap bin. So my scrap bin here is literally busting at the seams. I'm actually going to measure it and it is 14 inches by about 13.5 inches by about 6.25 tall, which is a little ridiculous. Now, these are all of my paper scraps in my entire scrap room. I do own an Etsy shop and I do a lot of paper crafting on that Etsy shop. So all of the scraps from those projects are also in here. Now, when I'm doing my scrapbooking, if you've been with me for any period of time, you know that I really don't use colored cardstock in my scrapbooking. I primarily only use white cardstock. I use white cardstock for stamping. I use white cardstock for matting photos. I use white cardstock for matting a scrapbook layout. I use white cardstock for card bases. I pretty much just use white cardstock. However, for my Etsy shop, I do have projects where I use other colors of cardstock. So you're going to see me pull out colored cardstock in this process here and put that aside. Now I use all my colored cardstock scraps and cut them into about 3x3 or 4x4 inch squares. And since both my husband and I work from home, we use those just as notes to be able to write notes to ourselves or write reminders or anything like that. And I just find that it's easy to use my colored cardstock scraps for that so they don't go to waste. They are still utilized, just not on a scrapbook layout. So I've got a pile here for my small paper strips. I've got a pile for my white cardstock. And I do have that little bin for little pieces of white cardstock that I'm setting aside to use for stamping or, gluing something or whatnot. And then I also have a pile for small pattern paper scraps, which is that little plastic bin. And then I have a pile for large pattern paper scraps, and that's pretty much anything about 4x6 and larger. And I'm just going to show you a little bit of this process. Now, some of these pattern papers do look like they're solids, but they're not. They may be like a distressed pattern paper or something like that. So I just know that even though something may seem like a cardstock, a solid cardstock, if I'm putting it with the pattern papers, then it really is a pattern paper. It's not just a solid cardstock. This process took me about an hour. Now, to me, that's not really that long if you think about the grand scheme of things. Excuse me. I have been working to fill this scrap box for probably a year. It's been a really long time since I've gone through it, and I thought it was just the perfect time. We're starting a new year, starting new projects, and it's time to go through this bin. Plus, it's not really usable. It's so full right now that anytime I go look for something, things just fall out, so I don't even go look for things in here. Now, I will be having a class release here soon with big picture classes. I'm not going to tell you the release date yet because I have not completed the class, and I don't want to jinx myself or anything like that. I do want to make sure that I get all the class material finished and approved before I give you the information about the class, just to make sure nothing changes. But I will be keeping you up to date on that. If you're interested in taking a class with me, make sure you keep an eye out for those details. But I'm also starting my 2020 scrapbooking already because last year I kind of failed at staying up to date on scrapbooking. So I'm really trying to make a conscious effort this year to start early and print photos as I go and scrapbook along the way. But I need to be able to use my scraps. I am a scrapbooker that utilizes my scraps, but when they're in a big bin like this, I can't use them. So I feel like they're just kind of sitting there and not being able to be utilized. So I have to sort through them to make them usable in order for me to actually, grab for them. I have tons of different types of scraps in here. I even have old planner pages that I cut apart. I have small pieces of die cuts that I may have cut apart. I have small pieces of packaging that I like the pattern on one side. I have all of these paper strips. I'm just putting them on top of this page protector right now, but later you're going to see that I find my old system of storing my paper strips. I thought I had actually lost it, but no, it's just in the very bottom of this bin. So I find that and I utilize it here at the end. I'm just going to show you a little bit of this process and then we're going to jump ahead and I'll go ahead and show you the after result of all of the processing and dividing and sorting through and, just cleaning up this scrap bin. Okay, so this is what I ended up with. It's going to be hard to show, but I have an empty bin here. It's empty. So we're going to put it there first are the pattern papers. So these are the pattern papers. And I think eventually I'll probably sort these out a little bit differently. But right now I've just got to get them organized enough for me to actually be able to use. So I'm just laying them in here. There's no rhyme or reason. I'm just making sure they're all flat. I have some that are kind of all cut to the same size, so I'm just going to kind of spread those out. That way, when I go to use them, I can find them. I'm really not necessarily a person that scrapbooks by color. I just kind of like to flip through papers until I find things that work. And I do have even some old planner pages in here, but those are sometimes good for journaling. So for now, we're just putting all this in here in this bin. The main thing is making it to where I actually can flip through it and try to find a couple things. And I wanted to make sure I had all my colored cardstock out of there. Like I said, I use that differently. I don't really use that in scrapbooking, so there's really no point in having it in my scrap bin, because my scrap bin is what I pull from when I'm doing a project. And if I'm not going to be using the color cardstock, why is it even in there? And the goal is to have this box maybe not even halfway full now that I've sorted all that out. So I'm just going to put this in here. And then now when I'm building kits, I can pull from there. I did leave a few pieces of neutral, and then I love teal, of the embossed paper. I still consider that to be somewhat of like cardstock. So I'm leaving a few of those pieces in there. And then I have like one sparkly, shiny yellow and teal. Again, another piece of that embossed. For the most part, I took all those out. But I left just a few to give me a little bit of variation. Okay, almost done. I just don't want to throw it all in there. I do want it to kind of be like all face up, kind of all in the same general direction. Some of these pieces, as you'll see, are possibly small enough to go into my little box here, but that box is full. So I don't want to necessarily overload it either. And it's okay if I have a few pieces of different sizes mixed in. When I go to build a kit, I pull from, hang on. Okay. Those are going for another project I thought about. So when I go to build a kit, I do pull from, I pull from these bins. So it's okay if there's overlapping things. I used to keep all of my grid papers together, but I don't necessarily need to do that any longer either. So I'm just putting those in here. Okay, those are smaller pieces. And then I'm going to show you this bin in just a moment once I kind of clean off the rest of the desk area, so we can see what I have. Now I do have this pack of paper, and these are adhesive papers, but they're just little strips. I believe they're 2 by 12. Yes. 2 by 12. So I'm leaving all of this together, but in this scrap bin because I really don't use them otherwise. I filled up 2 little bins of white pieces of cardstock. So these just hang directly from my shelf over here. These are from IKEA and they work well. Those are hanging from that shelf so I can grab from them when I need to. These are all the large pieces of white cardstock that I have, so I'm just going to clip those together, put them on top of my scraps. These are all the solid cardstock pieces that I'm going to trim up and make little note cards with. As I had mentioned, we use those on a daily basis. These are all the scraps that are kind of smaller. And as you can see, the bin is full. So I'm going to go ahead and put the lid on this. I had more things that could fit as far as like the size category in here, but I'm leaving them since this bin is full. I'm leaving it in the larger box. And then as I was sorting, I found my little sleeve here. This is a 12 by 12 piece of pattern paper that I had cut down and stitched just to make little pockets for my border strips and other little strips of paper. So I'm going to just slide all these in here. I had pulled out another page protector to make another one. And I don't pull from this enough, but I do like having all my little strips together because when I am looking for a strip of paper, I can come here and find it. And this is a piece of border paper that I had found in with my scraps. So I'm going to take these apart and put them in here as well. Okay, so I've got those paper scraps as well as my little strips, and I just kind of kept some of the smaller ones sticking out the top so I could grab them. But look at this. So much better. It's not even like full by any means. And these are all pattern papers, my white papers, my little adhesive strips. I have my border strips, and then I have my little scraps. So now everything is actually together and I can use it and find things. And that is really, really helpful. Now I feel like I could actually like find scraps when I want to add them to my kits. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you have any questions. This was just a quick watch me organize with me kind of video. Eventually I may sort out my scraps by color, my pattern paper scraps, but I haven't quite got to that point yet. Right now I just like to rifle through the bin, but at least now the bin's not overflowing and I can actually grab something out without everything falling out of it. I hope you guys enjoyed this today, and I will be back soon with another video. Bye!